team.
Hey there, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team, and we're going to be talking about something a little bit different today. We're going to be talking about Wood Elves, but more so in the fact, are Wood Elves bad for the game? Now, let's get some definitions out right away. And the first thing is, how are we defining Wood Elves? You know, I'm not really saying the actual book itself, because there's actually lots of different ways to play Wood Elves. Now that they actually have actual troops and actual ranked infantry, you can make a combat army. You could make a tree army. I am more talking about the avoidance army, the army that's designed to not engage whatsoever, run circles around you, and just pick off those 100 points, get the win, job's a good one. Now, is that actually bad for the game? Now, whenever I play Wood Elves, it always seems, and that's the style precisely that I play. I'm all about just the run around avoidance, and I'll pick off whatever I need to and avoid all the rest. I don't care how powerful your troll horde is, because I am never going to be fighting it. And what I usually find in the games is that it's really typically one-sided, one side or the other, but more so usually in the Wood Elf side. And what it really comes down to is that due to the range and the fact that my range is not dependent on getting magic or anything like this, I just roll dice and it happens. That I can really get in there, I can eliminate the things that can shoot back. So if you have your own war machines, something like an organ gun, if you have your own archers, whatever else you might have that's actually ranged, that can actually deal with me, or maybe it's even your fast units, right? If you have fast dog units or something like that, I can easily shoot those down right away, so that maybe on your first turn you might have something to respond back with, but on my following turns I'm just wiping that out. And then I also usually have after that 4 to 3 turns to pick something else a little bit more juicy to really kill off, get those points, so that even if you get off a magic missile or something like that and get some points off of me, I'm ahead by 100 points and I win. Sometimes it does go the other way. Sometimes they have very, very effective magic, lots and lots of shooting. Let's say we're talking about Dark Elves that have a lot of doom bolts. They have a lot of their crossbowmen that have shields, and maybe they're in a, well, I mean, cover doesn't worry anymore if you actually have the true flight arrows. But let's say if you went with a poison, all of a sudden if you're facing them and they're behind fences or walls or in forests, well, all of a sudden you're having a hard time hitting them. They have some armor, all the rest of it, and it starts getting a lot more difficult. Well, anyway, what I'm getting to is that these games seem to be not that enjoyable. Usually it's something where I'm kind of having an interesting time because I'm trying to figure out how to move around so that you can't really charge me or really affect me at all. And then on your side, you're just scrambling to find some way to capture me, to try and get some points from me. But in the end, usually there's a breakthrough and they just can't catch the Wood Elves. So there's a little bit of frustration. Even if it's not just straight up like an aggressive frustration, it's still a thing where you've ended the game and you're like, wow, that was really a non-game. I drove a half hour to the hobby shop, I took the 20 minutes to set up my army, and then I really just stood here for an hour and a half rolling armor saves and taking off guys. And it's just doesn't feel like a regular Warhammer game. Now, this is probably where we want to get to our next, what's the definition of a regular Warhammer game? And again, this can be very, very wide, but really, if you're comparing fantasy to something like 40K or War Machine or Malifaux or whatever else we're going to talk about, what is it that makes fantasy unique? And the biggest thing about fantasy is it's all about ranked infantry. It's not a skirmish game. For the most part, what really holds fantasy separate from everything else is that you have these blocks of infantry and you have this battlefield, and it's more about how you're going to be using them. The movement phase is important for how are you going to be trying to get flanks and stuff like this. And here's the real thing. If you're saying like this is a regular fantasy game, you insert this Wood Elf style of avoidance and it totally throws it all to whack. It just does not work, because here you have these armies with these big blocks ready to kind of fight the same thing on the other side, and there's nothing to fight. There's just all these elves on horses running around shooting you with arrows from 30 inches away, and there's nothing you can do. So here's the next question. We've kind of established this is the Warhammer norm, and then this is what Wood Elves do. As far as, again, I'm just focusing on that one play style. Now, is that bad for the game? Well, let's first of all take this from a tournament perspective, because tournaments and Wood Elves have always been a very weird interaction. By the book, if you win by 100 points or more, it's a win. But when it comes to tournaments, tournaments have different scoring styles. Sometimes they go with that, and of course, double will be then a massacre. Sometimes you have the 20-0 system. Sometimes you have different distinctions. Sometimes there's actually objectives that you're trying to do that will determine who the winner is rather than how many victory points are lost. Or even other ones, say like the Brawler Bash, are all about the points earned, right? Whatever you kill, that's how many points you take away from the game. And depending on which of these are being used, vastly affects how effective that avoidance army works. Clearly, if you're going by the book and it's by, oh, I'm ahead by 100 points, I got the win, and by the way, if you have 0 and I have 100, I more than double you, so it's a massacre. So if it's a style like that, the Wood Elves do very, very well. However, once you start getting to a 20-0, or say something like the whole idea where the points that you kill is what you earn, all of a sudden that whole idea of I'm going to go into a game trying to just get 100 more points than you isn't really getting you very far. It gives you the win, but say like in a 20-0 system, you're looking at an 11-9 win, which is a win, but if you're looking to get trophies, it's not going to really do it for you. Or same thing, if you're looking at Brawler Bash, you could try and win every single one of those games, but if from all your 6 games you only got 100 victory points, well, at the end of the day, you're going to get last place because everybody else is going to go out there and they're going to really fight it out and they're going to get big victory points, win or lose, and when you sum those all up, that means a Wood Elf player loses. So the whole way, and as a tournament organizer, and you're trying to bring up a new tournament, you're trying to decide, how am I going to score my tournament? You're almost deciding, how well do I want Wood Elves to do? And it's really hard to decide which way I want to go with this. Usually the easiest thing to say is, oh, I'll just go by the book, and we'll just say, you know, this is 100 points is a win, double is a massacre. But then again, another part that's hard with that when it comes to tournaments is if you use that design, well, for starters, assuming that there's not very many ties, after the first game, half are winners, half are losers, right? Or maybe there'll be a little bit more that are going to be the massacres, the massacre losses. And these are going to go on and on and on. And the problem is that, especially if you're looking at a 3-game or a 4-game tournament, you can very easily get to the end and have ties for who's the winner. There's not just one person who's there. Like maybe if you have Swiss pairings, it's coming down to a point, but then it doesn't really matter what your distinction is anyway, right? It's really just winners fight winners fight winners fight winners. But apart from that, like I said, if there's like, let's say you get 1 point for a tie and 2 points for a win and 3 for a massacre. If you're trying to put in a system like that, you a lot of times find that you have ties at the end, right? End of a 3-game tournament, wow, I got 4 people with 9s. What do we do now? And so that's really where you start bringing these other things. Okay, it's the 20-0 system. So it really is going to divide things up. Or, oh, I'm going to go with the Brawler Bash system where you get whatever you kill is what you earn. Then, very by far, it's really easy to break all the armies and all the players apart because 1 point difference for victory points could be what separates you apart. And so when you go to these, you're left with these Wood Elves just not being able to compete. So it's very interesting that you have this army that can very easily go into a game and get a win. But when you apply it to tournaments, it just won't work because the way that most tournaments are set up, like I've already explained, they're just not going to have the good points and they're not going to do very well, which is why you don't normally see Wood Elves in tournaments. Now, again, we got to bring this back to the start. Is the Wood Elves actually bad for the game? Well, if we end off that segment looking at tournaments, Wood Elves don't really have an effect on it. If Wood Elves come into there, they kind of lose and nobody really takes them. Or maybe you might get unlucky. Let's say I'm going to Brawler Bash and I face a Wood Elf. And it's like, well, I'm now screwed in the entire tournament because he's going to play avoidance, and even though he might not get a lot of points, I'm not going to get a lot of points, and I'm basically screwed. I'm basically going to be a game down compared to everybody else. So it's almost like an unlucky draw for who has to fight the Wood Elf guy and be screwed for the entire tournament, right? So that's really is kind of a problem when it comes to these tournaments and how those can actually work. So at first, when it's like, well, okay, the Wood Elves don't do well, so they won't be there. Wood Elves are kind of currently messing up the tournaments because of how they're drawing back whoever they kind of play, if it is that style. So what's the next way we can be looking at this? Why is it that the Wood Elves, if you go by the book, are winning so easily? And I think you have to really look at your win conditions. The win conditions are, if you win by 100 points or more, you get the win. If it's double or more, you get a massacre. So it's really all about trying to kill as much as possible while giving up as little as possible. And really kind of the different ways you can skew this is you can go for really aggressive armies. Like that's the skew that the orcs and goblins go. I'm going to take my trolls, I'm going to take my black orcs, I'm going to take my savage orc biggins, and sure, you might defeat one of my units, but I am going to tear you apart, and I'm going to be ahead by 1,500 victory points at the end, and I'm going to get the win. That's the one skew where I'm really pushing the whole idea of how much I'm going to earn. There's also the skew on the other side, and it's not even just the Wood Elf one. There's also the skew talking about I'm the Death Star. I have all these points into these 100 Phoenix Guard, and they're going to be having the bumped up ward save of the Banner of the World Dragon. Basically, I have all these points, and I'm not avoiding you. You can come and fight me, but you are not going to be earning any of these points, assuming you don't fail Leadership 10 rerolled and stuff like that, right? I'm just locking you down, and whatever points I get from you is going to determine how much I win by. So there's that, and that one could be equally frustrating, but again, it's part of the current game. And then finally, you also have Wood Elves, which are going for the same skew, but in a different way. I am going to make sure that I don't give you very many points. The target is 0, and then I'm just going to be able to pick apart and take my points. That's kind of a difference there, too. The Death Star doesn't decide where they take their points. Sure, you might have magic missiles if for some reason you're doing this skew where maybe it's Sea Guard or something like that instead. Maybe you can then actually shoot what you want. But for the most part, Death Stars are not range-based, so sure, they might pick off a few points at range, but for the most part, they are needing something to engage them. The Wood Elf style, although is more fragile, is able to pick their targets. Oh, okay, you have 2 weak units of fast cab, bam, bam. Those points are mine. Oh, you have a war machine? Okay, as long as I can roll 3 6s, those points are mine. And then I can just avoid and not give up anything else. And that's really the current system. Now, that system is then modified by scenarios. We have a very base typical scenario, which is just set up your armies and play. We have another one, which is one where your costs at the diagonal, you can be a little bit closer. Some of your stuff might start off the board, but it's really the same thing. And that style doesn't really change anything for a Death Star or the Wood Elves. The Wood Elves even like it if they roll a 1. Oh, I start off the board? Great. You just guaranteed me the Alpha Strike. Thanks. That's wonderful. Plus, it's easier for me to sneak around your army because if we're set up on a diagonal, there's that one corner where I can sneak around. There's also the Battle for the Pass, which again doesn't really do anything for either of these armies. Like, sure, whatever, the Battle for the Pass, maybe it's easier to cover it and move across as a line so that the avoidance army can't avoid you. So maybe there's a bit of that. But again, all you need is to punch through one little hole and it can all run through and it's game over. Then you have Dawn Attack. And this one actually helps the avoidance army because normally what you need to fight it is a cohesive force that's going to come up and ensnare. But if you have this random throwing around of armies, of your units, well, the avoidance army running around fast is going to find it a lot easier to pick apart the units that are not not supported, not protected they'd normally be, and then there's these big gaping holes for them to run through and do the whole song and dance. So then we come to a couple of other ones. First of all, we have Blood and Glory. Now, Blood and Glory is one of those things where it actually gives you a chance up against the Death Star. If there is the Death Star, you can just say, all right, I might not be able to get all the points for this unit, but clearly if they have almost no units, they have almost no fortitude, so maybe if I just kill the banner, like the BSB, or if I just kill the general, it's game over. So your whole game plan can be just to kill those things. Unfortunately, whereas that kind of helps deter the Death Star, for the Wood Elf style, it doesn't really change very much. In fact, with the change with the last book, I would say it's even more so on the Wood Elves' favor. Before, it'd be a thing where maybe some Wood Elves, with the way they design their army, they don't take many banners, so they might lose automatically, or you just have to magic missile that one banner unit, and then I win. Well, if it is designed correctly with a scattering of banners going through, that should be very difficult. Again, it's designed to not give up points, and sure, you might Irresistible Force that one magic missile and wipe out that one unit, but as long as I take enough banners, that won't really be an issue. The real issue for Wood Elves in that one is that they had a hard time winning it by Blood and Glory. They didn't really have a way to kill characters, and they didn't really have a way of killing your big blocks, so they didn't normally win that way. In come Waystalkers. Waystalkers can snipe out characters from units and can either shoot twice or ignore armor. All of a sudden, the idea of killing a BSB or killing a general gets a lot easier. And so it might be a thing again too where maybe that's not the way they're going to go. They're not going to try killing the general and just winning off Blood and Glory, but if not, there's nothing really in that stops them from their regular game. I can go into a Blood and Glory game. You'll start a little bit closer. That's a little bit of a worry for me. But again, as long as I just find that one hole, I'm getting behind you, or now that I have the Glade Riders, which are ambushing, I just get behind your lines and the circles start. And it's just like a regular game, except I really have to make sure that you don't kill those units with banners. That's all it really means. So finally, we come to the one scenario that actually does do the flip-flop, and that's going to be the Watchtower. Now, the Watchtower scenario, which is actually hated by a lot of players, plays a very, very key role here. And what that role is that it's forcing you into that center. It's forcing you to one local spot. Now, the Death Star, they can do actually very well at this one. They trudge up. They're too big to start in there, but when they get there, they're just going to try and eventually try and force their way in, and once they're in, it's game over. I mean, if you're not going to beat that Death Star outside of a Watchtower, you're not going to be able to shift them from inside a Watchtower. So really, the best you can do is maybe try and throw up fast units to slow them down so that you can hold that Watchtower, but that's really it. If they get there, it's game over. As opposed to the Wood Elves, where I can rush in some archers, but you'll just kill them and take the Watchtower back. Now, with the advent of the new book and being able to take true flight arrows, that kind of gives the Wood Elves a little bit more of a chance. Because before, if they were inside that tower, I'd be a -2 to hit, and it'd be very difficult for me to kill it. Now, because I have access to Shadow, I can lower your toughness, I can shoot you with arrows that are all hitting on 3+, and I can actually kill the units inside the tower. And really, the game then becomes kill the unit inside the tower so that it comes down to victory points at the end, right? Just try and wait to the end, run around, have a unit that's standing right by the tower, and then try and shoot anything that goes in. It is freaking difficult, but it's at least more of a possibility now than it used to be. But if nothing else, this one scenario, one from all 6, actually allows the Wood Elves to not be able to use their avoidance game. Now, here's the problem. Let's say that we were in a standard rulebook world and 1 in 6 games would be this. Well, I think as a Wood Elf player, if I win 5 out of every 6 games, I'm feeling like a very good player. Now, this doesn't even really exist, right? Because when it comes up to Watchtower, I already said a lot of people just don't like Watchtower. Oh, it's Watchtower? Let's re-roll that. Or let's just make it something else. And so all of a sudden, that whole idea where at least 1 in 6 they lose, well, we're not even doing that scenario anymore. Or when it comes to tournaments, you don't really see those in tournaments because, first of all, people don't like them and they'll complain. And two, as a tournament organizer, I have to design every single table to have a tower in the very middle for its Watchtower. Or either that, or when it comes to that scenario, I have to run around like, okay, building to have it ready for that scenario. So put those all together, and the one scenario that holds back Wood Elves does not exist. So let's now draw this all in and say, all right, what did we actually get to? Are Wood Elves bad for the game? And unfortunately, we can't even stop it yet because we have to now talk about again what you really want to get from this game. Now, some people get angry at the idea that I'm taking my blocks and you're running around and you're shooting and you're shooting and you're shooting, and it's like, oh, if I want to play 40K, I'd be playing 40K and stuff like that, right? But really, let's say we took that. You take your big blocks, I take our big blocks, we slam them together, we roll dice, somebody wins, somebody loses, game over. Is that really any better? Really, again, the same scenario as before. I pack up my army, I drive to the store, I set it up, and I roll armor saves for an hour and a half. Or I pack up my army, I drive to the store, I unpack it, we put our two lists together, we each roll a handful of dice, and then somebody wins, somebody loses. If that was really what you're after, roll your dice, and on a 4+ I won. Okay, good game to you. Now, again, that's a very, very oversimplification, but that means, again, that people don't just like Warhammer Fantasy because it's big blocks going across the table to fight. There's also, like I kind of talked about before, that movement aspect. There's a little bit more to it. There's the dynamics. There's the tactics to it. I'm going to try and redirect you here with my fast cast so I can get to the flank. I'm going to try and protect this and draw this in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So clearly, something to do with a dynamic movement phase is actually something that people are after, and that's part of the game. So how do we really take those two things and draw them together so that everybody's happy? And I think that maybe what it really comes down to is that Wood Elves aren't bad for the game is bad for the game. For starters, maybe the whole idea of just getting 100 victory points gets you the win should not be the basis of who wins these games. Maybe the basis should be more around objectives. If the objective was something more like, let's say Warhammer in every single game is going to be Watchtower. Deal with it. That is the game. We are going for Watchtower. Well, all of a sudden, people will be developing their armies to be dynamically ready for this. You're going to have your unit that's going to be starting in there. You're going to have your fast units that need to rush up, try and block them out of this Watchtower. You're going to have your real hammer units coming up behind that want to try and crush whatever was inside that tower, right? And you're going to have this dynamics around the tower. Now, maybe that's not a perfect example because the reason why people don't like the Watchtower is there's some issues with the building rules. Okay, that's fine. What if we change the game so it's around some other sort of objectives? And again, I've talked about this in other videos, but man, do I really feel this is really the issue. What if all of a sudden for our games, it didn't matter if you ended the game with 100 more victory points or not? What if the game was having to do where there were flags around the board? Or zones that you had to control that would force you to dynamically go out and try and control this or this. Am I going to be going for this flag over here, or am I going to try to control this zone over here? Which one of these do I want to go for? This is something that's going to be forcing people together, but it's not like a single point, right? It's not like the Watchtower where everything's going to converge to one spot and maybe something like a Death Star can win. Multiple objectives spread across the board, and then all of a sudden you want to be having a mobile army, but you also have to have a strong army that can actually get in that zone and then hold it. And that's what I really think it comes down to. It's not that Wood Elves are bad for the game. It's the actual system that is pushing it towards this. And it's not just Wood Elves. I'm sure for a lot of other people, if they got to see scenarios like these, it would just be a much more interesting game. Gun lines would go away. The whole idea of just monsters that fly around and try and pick on things would kind of go away because you have to end up in a zone. Fly around all you want. If you don't come to this zone, I'm going to score points and I'm going to win. So you could delve a lot more into the detail of how that would work, but in the end, that's truly how I'm starting to really feel is the issue of this whole problem of Wood Elves. So I'd be very interested to hear what your thoughts are, so please post them down below. But there you go. Are Wood Elves bad for the game? I wouldn't say so. We just got to find a way that hopefully Ninth will change the game so that we can all play the game we actually want to be playing. So there you have it. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later. Bye.